Hello, this is FRQs for AP Environmental Science. I am Dr. E. This was adapted from Christine Taylor. Thank you, Christine. Tips for writing an FRQ. Read, then reread the question. Then read the prompt, the stuff before it, or look at the pictures or look at the graphs. What exactly is it asking? And do you need evidence or reasoning to support your initial answer? Label each part of your answer clearly. 1A, 1A, I, 1B, however you need to write it to make sure that the reader can see it. Write only complete sentences. Partial sentences will not be graded. Do not use pronouns. It is not a good idea. What is it? What does that mean? Write it out every single time. What do you mean by it? Do not use vague concepts to answer the question. Global warming is cause of deforestation. What part of global warming? You need to be specific. Answers should be short and straight to the point. Only answer that question. Don't go on and on, because if you contradict yourself, you will lose the point. What these action words mean. What are these words that are at the beginning of each FRQ? What do they mean? Compare means to point out similarities, to examine two or more objects and consider how they are alike. Contrast means to point out their differences, to examine two or more objects and consider their differences. Identify, name, list, or give an example using complete sentence. Explain, tell how to do, tell the meaning of or why, and give reasons for. Provide detail and reasons in order to clarify something. For example, usually it's 2 points. You may want to make a claim and then give evidence and reasoning, or give evidence and then ask for claim and reasoning, or a single part of that, or maybe just 1 point. Describe, to give a picture or account in words. Use details to provide an accurate account. It's usually 1 point unless asked to describe 2 or 3. Discuss, to consider various points of view. Define, give a meaning for a word or phrase using a complete sentence. Justify, support your judgment statement using actual data or evidence. Refer to the data specifically. Analyze, interpret data sets or statements made based on evidence in order to reach a conclusion. Apply, use a biological concept, theory, principle, or mathematical equation in a novel context. Calculate or solve, use math to find a relationship. You may need to use your calculator. You should always show your work. Connect, find a relationship between two or more pieces of information. Construct, build or devise a representation or explanation of a biological concept. Design, produce an experimental plan that can be used to collect data. Evaluate, examine, and judge, usually involves determining if data justifies a conclusion. Represent, use a graph, data, or model to illustrate a concept. When you're doing math, calculations require that you show your work. There are no sentences. Make sure you show how you get your answer. Start by writing out the formulas that you're using, then show the values that you have inserted into those formulas. Then do the math, including units in your calculation. When you're done, box your answer, including boxing your units. If there's no units, you will not get any points, even if the calculation is otherwise correct. If you know you need a number to complete your calculation, but don't know where to get it, make one up. Clearly state you did this so you can complete your calculation, then carry on. Lastly, does the answer make sense? Would a family spend $2 million a month on water? When you are doing a calculation, it involves a direction of change. If a question asks for a change, a disruption, or effect, be sure to indicate the direction of the change. For example, write about that it's an increase or decrease in insulin levels causes, not a change in insulin level causes these effects. In recent years, this has been a point that has cost many students. In an experiment, if you are asked to design or describe an experiment, include these parts: the hypothesis and or predictions clearly defined. Identify the independent variables with units such treatments will apply. For example, typical one is how many years was it? Years determines whether there's growth or not, whether there is a decay or whatever. I identified the dependent variable with units. What will you measure? What data are you taking that is dependent on the independent variable? Identify several variables to be controlled. The controls are: describe the organisms or materials or apparatus that is to be used. Describe what you actually do, how you would apply that treatment. Give a clear description of or what is measured, how it is measured, and how frequently the observations or measurements will be made. Describe how the data will be graphed and analyzed. What is your reasoning for how you will draw a conclusion? Compare results to hypotheses and predictions. If you are asked to create a graph, that's usually 2 or 3 points. If the prompt asks for a specific type of graph, do it. Otherwise, determine the graph type. Label the axes. Make sure you include the units, both x and y axes. Plot all points and attempt to sketch a curve or connect the dots depending on what it's asking for. Otherwise, draw a curve. Include a key or label your lines. Must do that. The rules of answering FRQs. Answer incomplete sentence. Incomplete sentences are not graded. Less is more. Aim to answer in 1 to 2 sentences per question. Answers that contradict earlier parts of answer will disqualify you from getting the question correct. Don't show off. Do not flex. No one cares that you memorized every functional group. Just answer the question, nothing else. Number and letter each answer. Always write 1A, 1B, and so forth. Make it easy for the grader to give you points. So let's practice. A unique property of water makes life possible on Earth. Approximately 3/4 of the Earth's water is covered by water. 3/4 of the Earth's surface is covered by water. Cells are made up of 70 to 95% water. Water comprises roughly 70% of the human body. Describe one major physical or chemical property of water that make it unique from other liquids. Explain the properties of water that enable it to travel up roots and stems of plants to reach the leaves. Here's an answer. The answers were hydrogen bonds and transpiration. What is wrong with this answer? They're incomplete sentences. There are 0 points. Another one. Water remains liquid between 0 and 100 degrees because of the formation of hydrogen bonds between water molecules. Water moves through roots by cohesion between water molecules and adhesion between water and plant parts. What's wrong with this answer? No label. It doesn't say 1A or 1B. Answer. Water is a molecule that is bent at 104.5 degrees between hydrogen atoms. Its freezing point is 0 degrees Celsius. Its boiling is 100. Water is polar, which means it likes cold environments like polar bears. Water can dissociate into hydrogen and hydroxyl atoms, molecules, causing it to be a key component of most solutions on the pH scale. The pH scale is a measure of how acidic or basic a substance is. What's wrong with it? Too much flexing, too long. The rant is incorrect. Polar does not mean it gets cold. 0 points. Answer. Due to high electronegativity of oxygen compared to hydrogen atoms in a water molecule have a partially positive charge, while the oxygen has a partially negative charge. What's wrong with that one? Nothing. It's perfect, to the point, answer the question, and is labeled. The main thing you need to know is to be precise and be concise. Thank you, and I hope that was helpful.